point, if you were here for Tamika's talk and the panel, a lot of what I'm about to go over, they've already talked about, which is amazing though, because they understand the value in those records that we have here at the Georgia Archives. So to reintroduce myself, my name is Klemm, and I'm the Outreach Archivist here at the Archives. And so today we're going to be talking about those hidden treasures. They're going to be these records at the Georgia Archives that you're going to find that aren't online yet. We're going to talk about all of those resources and hopefully how you can kind of make the most of your visit when you come here to the archives. The real question is, I think I skipped a slide. Okay, hang on one second. We got to talk about the archives for a second. Just a brief kind of history and mission of the archives. We were created in 1918 by the Georgia General Assembly. And we were located in a single room or single level of the state capitol building downtown. We've obviously moved locations a few times over the years, but that's why you'll find us here today in Morrow. They were building the National Archives next door and realized that this was going to be an amazing opportunity to have a state archive and the National Archive in the same location. So that's how we ended up here in Morrow. We are a part of the University System of Georgia. We used to be under the Secretary of State's office. Every state archive operates a little differently. So you'll notice a lot of them are under their Secretary of State's offices. But we are under the university system, which makes it a really great way for us to collaborate with other institutions like Clayton State University with Penny back there. They're right behind us, and we're able to collaborate with them often throughout the year. So it's a really great relationship and way for us to operate. But the mission of the Georgia Archives is to identify, collect, manage, preserve, publicize, and provide access to the records of Georgia, the records and information of Georgia and its people, and assist state and local government agencies with their records management. So what does that really mean in practice? That's a lot of stuff. We are primarily state and local government agency records. That means we bring in permanent records from mainly state agencies at this point and make them available to the public. We help them with their records retention schedules as well, to help them figure out whether they should be permanent or if they can be temporary and held in a certain location, so that we're not hanging on to things that we don't really need to. Again, we make those records available to the public. We also preserve and protect through conservation. So we have a conservation staff here at the archives in-house where they make sure they monitor the collections that are coming in to make sure that there aren't any issues with those collections, pests mainly or mold or things like that, to protect the collection we already have. And then they also actively conserve items that are in poor condition. And then, of course, we promote outreach and engage with the public programming. So that's what I do here at the archives. We get to go out and talk about the archives, talk a little bit about what we do, and then we put on these programs throughout the year. Our next program is going to be Archives and Genealogy Day in October. So when we talked earlier today about signing up for the newsletter, that's going to be one of the next big events we'll be putting on. I also think we're doing a thing for FOGA in August, right, Penny? Yeah, so again, sign up for that newsletter. It's on our website, georgiaarchives.org. In the middle of the page, you'll find it there. It's super easy to sign up, and I promise not to overwhelm your inboxes with a million emails, because I understand how frustrating that can be too. All right, so let's talk a little bit about these non-digitized materials. So that's the question. Why should you even visit the archives in person? That slide Tamika had earlier with the iceberg, this is exactly what this is saying. About 95% of our collection has not been digitized. That's simply because our collection is so large. The majority of records that we pull in are going to be state agency records. So for example, there are things like governor's correspondence or maybe like highway department records. And I can see how that might not be the most valuable types of records for genealogy research, especially if we're looking for a specific person. But we do have some records that are valuable that just haven't been scanned in simply because of the size of the collection. Unfortunately, we don't have 15 scanners or cameras or anything going in our back offices at all times like we wish we could. We have a small and dedicated reformatting staff. Shout out to Amy and James, who are working really hard to digitize these items, but they're limited in what they can do. So, but because of that limitation, often what we have scanned in are collections that are, either something that's frequently requested, or maybe it's frequently used. People put their hands on it a lot. So we're wanting to preserve those originals and to provide public access at the same time. So even if some pieces of a collection have been digitized, what you're going to find online is usually just often the tip of the iceberg, like Tamika showed us earlier. So by visiting the archives, you can fill in gaps, you can cross-reference sources, and hopefully you can look for stories that might be buried in those collections. So I always say, good research is going to start with good preparation. And I think we've all talked, Tamika touched on that, the panel touched on that as well. Think about what you want to find. Think if you're looking for a specific ancestor. Think if you're looking for a specific land record, or maybe you're looking for just general information about the community where your family lived. Think about those exact types of records you're looking for. Have names, have dates, especially counties. As you could tell already, a lot of Georgia's records are organized at the county level. And so location is incredibly important when you're doing research. So again, Tamika touched on this morning, but before you arrive, and I do understand the irony in telling you to do some online research ahead of time before when I'm talking about collections that aren't digitized. But what we've tried to do with our website is put together as many resources as we can so that you can do some research ahead of time. You can be as prepared as possible when you're coming into the archives. You want to spend your time here as prepared as possible. You can spin your wheels very easily here just because of the size of the collection. And I see Tamika nodding her head, so she would know. So again, you want to be as prepared as possible. Tamika went over these earlier. This is just a little screenshot of that featured content section at the bottom of our website. The virtual vault for digitized images. I can't say how important that collection is. You're going to find maps, documents, indexes for the microfilm, which I'll go more in depth about as well. You're going to find photographs. There's just so much in that collection that has already been digitized. So that is where you're going to find those digitized images. You'll also find our finding aids down there at the bottom. That's where you're going to search for those original records. We have our book and manuscript catalog for kind of secondary resources and things like that. And then our research guidance page, Allison Hudgens, our public services manager, put together this resource page that is a font of information. This is where we've gathered everything that we've put together over the years. As researchers have had questions. All of this has been compiled by the amazing reference team and the rest of the archive staff that's downstairs to kind of give you a guide, because even if we don't have the information, we know where to recommend to go next. So that's a lot of what that research guidance page is for a lot of records. And she's split it up so that you can look at family history records, land records, and she's given you as many resources as she can right there under that research guidance page. So take a look at all of those things. Do some online digging. As Tamika said earlier on, if you keep going back to Tamika's talk, you can sit in your pajamas at 3 a.m. and do this very easily. So we have two kind of broad format categories of records that are going to be unique to the archives. They're going to be our microfilm collection and our original documents. For microfilm, I would always recommend starting online with the virtual vault indexes. It's not going to cover everything for microfilm. We have a ton of microfilm. But I'm going to show you a video here in just a second. And Tamika already went through and showed you, but I think this video will also be helpful when you're looking at those indexes online. On site, we have our old school card catalog. So just remember your childhood, going to the library, using the card catalog. It's the best way to look through the microfilm collection when you're here. For original records, you're going to use that finding aids link under our featured content section. So these are going to guide you through the physical files in And one of the other things I do want to point out about doing research ahead of time is our Ask an Archivist web form. So on our homepage, under our contact information, you're going to find this blue button that says Ask an Archivist. It's going to take you to our web form. It's very simple. It's just your name, your email, and your question. But you can send in questions to our reference team ahead of time. It's important to know, be as brief and factual as you can. We're not going to be able to do super in-depth research for a very particular person, anything like that. But some good questions might be, do you have a very specific book or record at the archives? Or how do you access something that you found somewhere online that says it's at the archives? Questions like that. It also helps us prepare as well. So if you tell us you're going to come to the archives next Wednesday, we can have those records already looked at and pulled for you, and that's going to help save you some time when you get here. Okay, quickly about our microfilm collection. We have over 34,000 rolls of microfilm, and we are in the process of doing an extensive inventory of that microfilm as well. So the kind of story behind it is in the 1950s and 60s, we partnered with the Genealogical Society of Utah, now known as Family Search. So they were helping us to microfilm county and state records across Georgia. They kept the master negatives and we kept the used copies here at the archives. But our microfilming program continued past when they left. So we have things on microfilm. We continued into 1996. So some of those things have never been scanned in by Family Search. And so keep that in mind. The records themselves are really going to be early, pre-1900s. But as far as what we have beyond what Family Search has, that's going to give you an idea of like how many years we've spent, microfilming things that they won't have. And I did include here how you know who scanned in the film. And when you're in the card catalog and you see SLC, that's going to be Salt Lake City, that's Family Search. If you see AH, that's the Georgia Archives and History. We used to be the Department of Archives and History. And then GRG is Georgia Archives. So that's kind of a quick guide on those abbreviations that you're going to see on those cards. So before I mentioned that you can see indexes to some of the microfilm collection on the virtual vault. So to give you an idea of how to use those indexes, I've borrowed a video that Allison Hudgens, our public services manager, put together on accessing the index of county records on microfilm. Just a couple of notes before I start this video. A couple of things have changed since then, since she created it. So I did try to add in our updated website to show you where the link to the virtual vault is and the correct page in the virtual vault. The indexes have all been renamed with index at the front of the collection, so they're all together and easier to find on page 4 of the virtual vault. One other thing before I start this video is specific to county records, but the same mechanics apply to all of the microfilm indexes on the virtual vault. You might not see an actual card scanned in like you'll see in this video, but in the description, you're going to see the drawer and the box number you're looking for.
The Georgia Archives holds a large collection of pre-1900 county records on microfilm. Some of these records include wills, inventories of estates, guardianship records, marriage records, inferior or ordinary court minutes, deed records, and superior court minutes. To check if the Georgia Archives holds a specific county record, go to www.georgiaarchives.org. Click the virtual vault, go to page 2, and click County Records on Microfilm Index. Select your county, click on the blue expand arrow, Probate court records are listed first, in order alphabetically. Superior court records are listed after probate court, also alphabetically. When you find the type of record that you're interested in, you can check the years and/or the volumes available. On the left, you'll find the physical drawer and box location within the microfilm library at the Georgia Archives.
Let's talk a little bit more about those records that aren't going to be digitized. We're going to talk about some specific ones. And again, the presenters this morning mentioned most of these, but we're going to start with land records. So we do hold original land grants and plats, documents that are going to convey ownership and map out land parcels. The land records are valuable for genealogy because they're going to place an ancestor in a specific location at a specific time. They may also reveal relationships, land, as it's being passed between family members, or if it was claimed as part of maybe a widow's dower or an estate division. In areas where census records are missing or incomplete, land records can also help fill in those gaps. Many of you already know Georgia's land distribution system is very distinctive. Unlike a lot of other states, we distributed land through a series of grants or lotteries from the mid-18th century into the early 19th. These grants and lotteries gave mostly white male citizens the opportunity to claim lands that were seized from Native nations. And so those records are now key resources for tracing settlement patterns and migration family movements across the state. Some early land grants are going to be available online through Family Search, but most of those later grants, and especially those from the land lottery era, are not going to be digitized usually. If you're searching for plats, a specific plat, it's really important to know that loose plats, those unbound land surveys, sometimes those are online, but they're going to be spotty because those loose plats were retained sometimes by the Surveyor General's office to be put into bound official plat books. And so what you're going to find often is it's the loose plats that were digitized and not the full plat book. And so these recorded plat books contain most of Georgia's land plats and are available on microfilm here at the Georgia Archives. If your ancestor received land or transferred it, we may also hold that documentation, whether in original form or on microfilm. So there is a piece of that collection that is indexed on the virtual vault under colonial and headright plats. It's very specific years, 1735 to 1866. Again, that's an index though, so there's not going to be those images, but you can search by name, and it would give you, the name of the person who the land was surveyed for, the number of acres the land was, the plat volume, and the page number that you can find the plat recorded in as well. Sometimes finding plats like these, though, requires a lot of detailed information. So things like the land lot number, the district number, or the name of the original grantee. You can find information about these, the land systems, and these types of records, again, on that research guidance page. We've put together some frequently asked questions and some general history about the land distribution systems and these particular records on the research guidance page. Tax Digest, again, those have been mentioned this morning. They're another incredibly valuable on-site research, on-site resource here at the archives. We hold nearly complete tax records from every county from 1872 to 2002. These digests are especially important because they're going to help fill in gaps from records like the census. So for example, the 1890 census was just mostly destroyed in a fire. Those records are going to help fill those gaps left by those records. But that's really just one of the ways that these records can be incredibly valuable. You can use tax records to confirm that an ancestor lived in a particular county in a given year and to track when someone might have died or moved. If a person disappears from the tax list, or maybe if the name listed changes from estate of or heirs of, that's usually going to signal a transfer of ownership. Sometimes you can find widows, unmarried women, and even minor heirs will appear in these records if they held taxable land or property. You'll also see poll tax entries for adult males, including freedmen after the Civil War. So in some years, those entries can note a parent or former enslaver. You can also see the free persons of color in the tax digest prior to 1865. So these records can give you kind of a rare link for African American genealogy as well. These, as Tamika talked about, the militia districts, these digests are usually arranged by militia districts. So you may discover neighbors and relatives listed near each other, kind of like you would in the census. If someone defaulted on taxes or claimed a homestead exemption, that would often be recorded as well. So some tax entries even show land ownership before a grant was finalized. And so those can predate the land lottery paperwork or deeds that we typically rely on. Indexes for many of the tax digests are available on the virtual vault, like we just went over, but the full records are here on microfilm on site. So they're well worth taking a look at, kind of digging into. They can help you build a timeline as well. And again, I repeat, make sure you bring as much information as you can. Bring the county name, bring a surname, bring a year, a date range you're researching, and look across multiple years. That's when you start to build patterns and start to see how things settled out in certain areas. So just like with the land distribution system, we have a frequently asked questions page on our website that you can get more information about the tax records and how to use them for your research. So here are some of the things that we have that aren't more widely well known. Although we do mainly carry state agency records, we do have some personal and business records. These are not going to be government records. Instead, they're going to be things that were donated to us from individuals and families. And so we hold things like ledgers from general stores, pharmacies, and taverns, and some of those date back to the early 1800s. These volumes will document purchases, prices, and even debts of people. And sometimes they'll have notes about exactly who bought what and when. It's probably unlikely that you had a specific ancestor donate their business records to us. But if you had someone who was living in a particular area for a long time, there's a good chance that they could show up in these records as they visited the general store, or they went to a tailor or a pharmacy. So it's possible to find people if you know what area you're looking in. This particular ledger right here comes from the Eagle Tavern in Watkinsville. It records daily business transactions. I think they dealt mostly kind of like liquor and dry goods, but it will list names and dates on the accounts, and includes, like for example, this would include members of the Ligon family who showed up regularly in those records. So it's a really great resource. And I always think about these when you're doing just general Georgia history or general history research as well, because this is the type of thing that's going to show you what daily life was like in other areas as well. So these records are part of our manuscript collections, and many of those are indexed in the book and manuscript catalog. Again, you can find that on the featured content section of our website. They're especially valuable for researchers tracing local history, economic life, or just trying to fill in those extra kind of details as you're doing your research. This one is kind of a little known collection. These are the governor's clemency applications. They're going to go from 1858 to 1942. These files are created when individuals or their families, or maybe even legal advocates, petition the governor for things like pardons, paroles, and the restoration of civil rights occasionally after they were convicted. They can include things like letters of support, legal arguments, and sometimes they'll even have photographs. But this is going to give you some context behind some of those court or prison records that you might find along the way. So this example right here, Lizzie Boatwright was 18 years old when she was arrested and convicted of theft in McDuffie County in 1897. She and another woman were caught with clothing that they claimed that they both stole. The clothing amounted to about $4 at the time. But they said that items were given to them, but they were both convicted regardless. And each woman was sentenced to pay either a $50 fine or serve 6 months on a chain gang. Yeah. And so the woman that was with her was able to pay her fine. Lizzie was not. And so she went and spent time on that chain gang. And so this letter in particular from her file is a part of her clemency application. And so this is an inspector who visited the camp and saw the types of conditions that she was in and explained the situation to the governor. And the governor later granted her clemency shortly after. So these petitions and letters and things like that can really be an amazing resource if you have someone along your, family history that might have petitioned for anything like this. And then Tamika again mentioned newspapers this morning and how important they are. And I'm going to steal that, the newspapers were social media of their time. Especially when you're looking for census, the census records when they thinned out, or you're just looking for more details, for more personal details. We do have the Atlantic Journal, the Atlanta Constitution, and the AJC on microfilm, and these are available on site for free. Now I know that those three big papers, you may be able to find them online, but a lot of times they're behind paywalls, so they might be hard to access that way. They might not have the full thing digitized, or even the scanned quality of the newspaper itself might not be that great. But our microfilm copies are a lot better for those types of images and for more complete runs. So that's really helpful when you're looking for things like obituaries and local events, or maybe military service mentions. So one standout in our collection is the Atlanta Independent. This is an African-American newspaper that was published from 1903 to 1928. So you might be able to find small pieces of the Independent online, but we have almost the full run of the paper here. I do say almost because we are missing a couple of issues, but papers like the Atlanta Independent were incredibly important because they're going to include coverage of politics or civil rights or maybe community news from underserved communities that you might not see anywhere else. So for example, this is Captain R.J. Jones of Atlanta. This was in the Atlanta Independent. Captain Jones was a Black militia leader in Atlanta and featured this is a photo of him, but it also featured him in his uniform with his affiliations listed. So that's just not the kind of thing you would often see in mainstream newspapers. So again, papers like the Atlanta Independent were incredibly important. And you can find those all here on microfilm. The family surname vertical files were mentioned again this morning as well. So these are materials that are going to be donated by researchers over time here at the archives that aren't going to be published anywhere else or digitized. These are going to include things like compiled family histories, photocopies of family Bible pages, correspondence between researchers, unpublished charts, lineage notes, and things like that. These are going to be kind of one-of-a-kind files. So they may reflect decades of kind of independent genealogy work sometimes. And because these are vertical files, we don't have them like cataloged at an item level, but what we do have on our website is this list of surnames that are included in that file. So when you're on our website, if you just search surname file, it should be the very first thing that pops up. But basically, if you find a name on this list that matches yours, or even one, a name from the county that you're searching that you've seen multiple times in other places, it's definitely worth a look to take a look inside that file. It might be hit or miss, but it could save you a good chunk of time, even if you're able to find something. So let's see. And then one of the huge things that we have here are going to be county civil and criminal case files. They are going to include the Superior Court cases. That's going to be the majority of what we have. The selected probate and justice of the peace records as well. They're going to cover things like lawsuits, debts, and foreclosures, divorces, property disputes, and criminal charges as well. These aren't available for every county, but those we have are incredibly detailed and they're almost never digitized. So look for these in our finding aids. You'll be able to find most of them there on original documents rather than microfilm. This example right here is from Hancock County in 1887. So the white relatives of a man named David Dixon contested his will. He had left the majority of his estate to his daughter, Amanda Dixon, who was the child of an enslaved woman. And so the case went forward and challenged her right to inherit that land or the estate. And the documents include interrogations, depositions, and all those things related to that court case. So you'll find, these can be pretty extensive, pretty dramatic too, if you find things in there that you're looking for. So that's just a high level overview. We could spend all afternoon here talking about all the things that we have. I just wanted to hit on the really big ones, and then a couple of the ones that people might not think about that often. But again, so to kind of recap, preparing for your visit, review those online tools, look through our virtual vault, look through our finding aids, look through that research guidance page. All can be found at the bottom of georgiaarchives.org under that featured content section. Don't hesitate to reach out to us via that Ask an Archivist web form. Please send us questions. Register as a researcher. If you are planning this afternoon or anytime today to go into our reference room and do some research, check in at the welcome desk down there and get registered. If you haven't registered already, you just make sure you need to bring a government photo ID with you when you go to register. And then once you go into our reference room, you're going to see our reference library on your right. That's going to include some surname books. We have county histories. We also have a lot of periodicals from a lot of the societies, the genealogical societies as well. So those might be really great resources. We have our reference computers at the center of the room that you're going to use. You can, again, use all of those things that we've already talked about, virtual vault, finding aids, all of that good stuff. But we also have access to Ancestry on those computers and things like Galileo, some databases that are really helpful. The microfilm library, like we've talked about, again, it's going to have those indexes, the court records, newspapers, things like that, and more. And then if you are going to be looking at original documents, you'll be looking at them in ODRA, which is our original documents reading area. If you have anything you want to look at there, again, I would say either send in a request via Ask an Archivist. And just know if you're here at the archives and you find something you want to have pulled, it might take a little while, a couple minutes for the reference staff to pull it, but they're more than happy to do that. All right, so that was a pretty brief presentation on it, but hopefully some of these records will give you a good starting point to kind of dig into those records, good places to start. So if you, our reference staff is amazing. I think Tamika already mentioned them, but I do want to give a shout out to them again. They're incredibly helpful and they're incredibly smart, and I go to them for everything. So if you're stuck anywhere or you're just not sure if you've hit a brick wall, definitely just reach out and ask. Don't hesitate to do that. So does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
What's your policy about making copies of original documents?
For them, it depends. This is what we'll say all the time. I just went through the Georgia Archives Institute, and all week long we just kept saying it depends. So yeah, it depends on the record itself. There are going to be some things that are embargoed or prohibited, but when you're looking at records in the original in ODRA, the archivist will go over that. A lot of things you can photograph yourself, as long as there's no flash on your phone. But it just depends, but they'll let you know exactly, what you can and can't.
So I tried to do that sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's a glare because of the sheet.
Yeah, and sometimes, and then you can request copies. I don't know. I think there is a small fee for most of them, but I don't know exactly what it is. But yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what about records for like the Georgia militia? Those kind of military.
I don't know how deep, do you know, Tamika, for the militia records? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would say check online on the virtual vault or even the finding aids first. We may even have some books. So I don't think we have like an extensive list or anything like that, but it's possible. Yeah.
Books. There are books.
That's why I say books. Yeah, that's Ken at the back.
Of the militia people.
In the reference library. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
From back to militia districts
Mhm.
and the names that they have, where do those names come from? Did they come from the captain of that militia district and did those names change or?
That's an excellent question. Do you have to know, Tamika?
There's a book, I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but there's a book that really talks about the militia districts, and I think Paul Graham may have written it. But yes, they were named after some of the captains of the district. They changed and then they went to a more standardized version. So that's a really quick overview, but yes.
His name was Paul Graham.
Paul Graham.
Okay.
They've written a lot of books, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have records of where enslaved individuals were listed as property?
So the majority of records that you might find an enslaved ancestor list as property are going to be estate records. As people were, you know, like that gentleman, you know, passing on his estate to their heirs. So you may be able to find some of those. And we do have some of those. It just really, again, depends.
There are also deeds. These African Americans show up in deeds as well.
Okay,
There was a group
but that would be in state records as well, or here?
they'll be in land records. So
Land record, okay.
there's another resource. And then there's actually a book on the Georgia slave sale,
Okay,
slave bills of sale. That's actually downstairs as well. So that's another resource. But yeah, they show up in deeds, they show up in probate records.
I've actually found Cobb County estate records where whoever microfilmed these things, they had a file folder and they listed out the names and the gender of the enslaved.
That's what I'm-
The front of the file folder.
okay,
And some of those are actually on Family Search too. So some
Okay.
of those records are on Family Search.
okay.
In the back there.
I was gonna say, just from my own personal research, for Hancock County, some of the slaves are listed in church records because they're joining churches and they'll tell who's the master or owner. So just from my own research, you might want to look at some of the church records where they have established churches in like the 1820s or what have you, not the individuals was such a big state and Baptist convention was held in Hancock County and all that kind of stuff. So they really are high on.
Thank you. And Ms. Penny.
State records in the inventory and appraisement. I don't know if they're there or the inventory and appraisement folks. I know in Upson County, there's more of a description that have the names and all sorts of information. And because those will be in the state records, we'll have the inventory and appraisement as well. But a lot of times it goes into more detail.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.
I will say, I started this job 2 years ago and I wasn't even involved in genealogy research at all, but I've been amazed and astonished and blown away by this community and how connected and amazing it is. And the resources, everybody pops up and they've seen things in different places and it's amazing. Everybody's so willing to share and being so open. So that's an amazing part of this community. Anybody ever had any other questions? No? Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You have access to the slave narratives that are online. Some people can find if you have a in college or have kids in college that have educational type access to libraries, college libraries and things. There their things have like some of the stuff that you only pay for free, but you can use them on that to access information. And what I was saying about, because I get sidetracked, but the slave narratives, if you have access to those, what I started doing, or when I first started kind of doing some research, I tried to find the names of the enslaved people that they took with WPA narratives, going through there, looking at them and talking, when they talk about joining churches, looking for those churches that was still in that area. I mean, you have that, was able to find some of those churches that their enslaved names along with their owners in the church minutes or church records. That's how I was able to do that. Like I said, Hancock County is one of the earlier established counties that have a lot of stuff dating back to like 1885, 1785, that kind of stuff. So, and they branched out into other places.
Thank you.